You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about our current sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. As you well know, if you've been following This is Oklahoma, they've been a huge part of this podcast. So this podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling an Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Also, for the podcast, a new sponsor, RCB Bank. Since 1936, RCB Bank has offered progressive products and a friendly service. Come in today to find out more about their loan promotion on new, used, refinanced cars, boats, campers, and ATVs. Visit RCB Bank to learn more. RCB Bank, that's my bank. With approved credit, restrictions apply. Now, let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at the Bedford studio today with someone who's spent more time on camera and probably on screen than I have. Carson Cunningham's with me today to talk about sports. Mate, thanks for coming down on your day off.
Yeah, it's great. We met on the golf course, and you asked me to come on, and it took a little while. I've been vacationing, and summertime's kind of when we take most of our vacation before college football season gets going. So it's good to finally be here.
And then you work every day, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it gets really busy in the fall. It does. And you just can't take a vacation because you're covering college football. And especially, I work for the ABC affiliate in Oklahoma City. And if we have an OU game or an OSU game on our air, we do an hour-long pregame show, an hour-long postgame sometimes. Sometimes we do both. Yeah. And so that gets really busy.
Well, clearly you love doing it, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't still be doing it.
I love it.
Yeah. So before we dive into current job then, take us back. Did you grow up here?
Grew up in Edmond, Oklahoma. I was born at Mercy Hospital in Oklahoma City, but they took me straight to Edmond. So I'm born in Oklahoma City, but I'm basically born and raised in Edmond. My parents still live in the house that I grew up in. And it's kind of funny, they haven't remodeled it one iota to where when I go home, it's like going back in time.
Literally go back in time.
And so, I grew up in Edmond, and I was actually a big soccer player. I played club in high school, but club especially, it's all I thought about. It's all I cared about. And I traveled around the country doing that. And then when it got to time to go to college, it was like, do you want to play NAIA or Division II, or do you want to just go to a major university? And I just decided to go to Oklahoma State, where both my parents went. And so growing up here, I didn't know, you never really think about what you want to do with your life. Right. I just was playing soccer. I wanted to play for Manchester United. I wanted to play soccer. That's all I thought about. And so that was kind of my life growing up, was just playing soccer here and growing up in Edmond.
Yeah. And I mean, growing up late 90s, early 2000s, when Man United were the best team in the world. Ryan Giggs, Cantona, Beckham, Scholes.
See, Cantona was my guy. He was the guy that popped his collar, and he's the guy that first I really truly fell in love with the club. And back then, we didn't have games on TV like today. I want to watch England, Germany today. But back in the day, we only had one show on a Sunday night on Fox Sports with Lionel Bienvenu. I somehow remember the host's name. They would show highlights from every Premier League game, and that was my only access to the English Premier League. Now I can watch every league, every game if I want to. So that was kind of a unique way I fell in love with Man U.
So you go to Oklahoma State. Are you doing any new stuff in high school, announcing, calling games in high school to get you interested in it? No?
Zero. I mean, high school again. I went to class. I did the bare minimum. I wasn't in any clubs because it was all soccer all the time. We played year-round, indoor, outdoor. We were serious, and we were good. I mean, that's why we were able to travel so much. But I didn't have any experience with broadcast or news. And like I mentioned, I never really thought about a career until I got to campus. And so I was so lost. My dad was a business major from Oklahoma State. He said, just major in business and you'll figure it out later. Yeah. Did that, was terrible at it. I mean, financial accounting 101 is the reason I'm in television, because it made my brain into mush, and I could never get those numbers to add up. And I quickly realized, this isn't going to work. I need to find something else to do. And, you just start thinking about, what am I good at? What are my passions? And right when I made that decision to change my major, the head of the journalism, or the head of the newspaper for Oklahoma State, the Daily O-Collegian, came into one of my just general business classes. It was like, hey, we're looking for people to write for the newspaper, and you don't even have to be a journalism major if you want to. You'll pay you and all that. And I was like, I read the sports page every day. How about I do that? But then when I went to switch my major, they were like, you got to pick between print or television. And so I kind of just thought about it. I was like, I'm way better at talking than writing. Like I like writing. I'm decent at it, but I'm way better at just being myself. And I've always kind of been a people person. Yeah. And so I was like, I'll go work for the paper and I'll major in TV, and then I'll just pick which one I like best. And I ended up covering women's soccer was my first beat, and I ended up becoming the sports editor of the entire paper. Yeah. But I took my first TV class, and I kind of knew. I was like, I'm pretty good at this, and like, it's not something you ever consider. Right. Like, I never even considered someone would pay me money to go on television and talk about sports. But then I just started thinking about it. I grew up watching it every single night with Bob Berry Jr., and that's who I ultimately interned with, and he ended up giving me a job. So it literally just kind of fell into it.
Yeah. It's a real skill, though, isn't it? Like, when you put yourself on camera and that light goes on and you are talking directly to that camera and you have to present in a time. I mean, I have a lot of appreciation for people who do that, because I've tried it, and it takes, like anything, it takes time to develop, and it's a skill, but I mean, it is harder than a lot of people think it is.
It's like your golf swing that's so pretty. You weren't just born with that. You had to practice it. Right. It's the same thing, and I was bad when I first, everyone's bad. Sure. Their first time trying to do a stand-up, we were trying to act natural. It's just, it's hard. It's really hard, and it takes, like, reps are the most important thing, just like I'm sure your golf swing too. And I work with a lot of interns that come through Channel 5, and I've gone to colleges and spoken to their students about it. And the one thing that was beaten into my head from Bob Berry Jr. and Bob Berry Sr. that I try to beat into the heads of young broadcasters now is you just got to be yourself, and the viewer will decide if they like you or not. If you try to be anyone other than yourself, it's going to come across as phony. Yeah. And so that took me a lot of time to kind of find my voice and kind of find my personality into my sportscasts. Because when you first start, you want to sound like the guys you saw on Sports Center. Well, I'm not Stuart Scott. Yeah. I'm Carson Cunningham. I'm a totally different person. And so it's the hardest thing to do is to act natural on camera. It's one of the hardest things you can learn to, but just the more you do it, the more comfortable I am now. Like there's a lot of times where I don't even write a script because I think I'll be better. Yeah. Like when I'm standing here with the anchors, I'm not writing anything. I just want to be me, and that's the only way to do it.
Yeah. So you're at OSU, you find your passion, you go into it, and you figure out that I'm actually pretty natural on TV. Where does it go from there? You said you covered women's soccer, and then you become the editor. Like, tell me through that process.
Yeah, just kind of paid my dues with the newspaper, and just people graduate, and you kind of just work your way up, and became the lead sports writer. And then the sports editor job was open. I was like, well, that'll look good on a resume, so I'll be the sports editor. And the whole time I was majoring in broadcast and turning out stories, and I was covering the football press conferences for OSU. But the way television works, you basically have to go get an internship with a TV station just to kind of get your foot in the door, just kind of learn what that's like. And there was only one place I wanted to go. Was the guy I grew up watching was Bob Berry Jr., legendary sports broadcaster. Unfortunately passed away about 6 years ago in a car accident. He was the guy that I grew up with. Like I felt like I knew him. That's how often I would watch him every single night. And that's kind of when I started thinking about my career. Like, oh, I could do what he does maybe. Yeah. And so I literally just picked up the phone and called the TV station and said, can I speak to Bob Berry Jr.? Yeah. And of course, being the dumb college kid I was, I called at like 10:15. He goes on at like 10:20, 10:25. So he picks it up like frantic. I gotta go. Yeah. He like wrote my name down, and then he called me after the show.
Good thing that he picked up the phone though.
Well, they had back then. They had to, because that was the only way you were gonna get like scores and information.
Oh, so he might have thought it was.
That was before like every score was on Twitter. Gotcha. You know. Yeah. So I got lucky there, and he just let me intern for 2 summers. I only had to intern 1 for college, and that's something I beat into college students' heads. Like,
keep doing
do more than the bare minimum, and that kept my foot in the door. Yeah. And so I was covering OSU for the school, and I ran into him at a bowl game down on the field. It was Oklahoma, West Virginia Fiesta Bowl out in Arizona. I had family in Arizona, so I went out there, and I literally bump into him. He says, "Hey, good to see you again. It's been a few months since I'd seen him." He's like, "You want a job?" And I was like, yeah, but I have a semester left, and it'd be great to work in my hometown market, but I don't know how it's going to work. And he goes, call your parents, figure it out, and call me back. So, okay. So for my two off days at Channel 4, they hired me full time as basically a photographer at this point. I wasn't on camera right away. So I was literally 23 years old at the time. Probably looked about 16. So for my 2 off days during the week at Channel 4, I'd go back to Stillwater and finish school, finish up my last 16 hours, 14 hours, whatever it was. And then I was working 5 days a week. So I'm sitting in Stillwater, like TV class. Yeah. And I'm already an employee at Channel 4. My classmates probably thought thought my head was this big around. They probably thought I was the coolest. They probably thought I was the coolest guy ever. And it was a long semester. It was really hard. I had a college girlfriend at the time. It was hard on us, but it was so worth it having a job in my home market, because guys like me typically go to small town Texas and pay their dues and make no money. Bob Jr., when he started, was eating relish sandwiches. That's all he could afford. His dad sent him a bunch of jars of relish. Ugh. And so I didn't have to suffer those hardships. And he brought me along to where, I'd do a story like once a month, and then I'd get more comfortable on camera. He'd give me pointers. But it was pretty ugly my first couple of times. My first few stories, I'm glad that they're probably lost in the archive somewhere.
Someone can find them, but it's going to take a lot of effort to find those stories. Right. So tell me about, like, before we go on to like getting into TV, tell me about like just great times at OSU covering stories. I mean, obviously we have a shared passion for golf, and OSU golf is, one of the best teams in the nation consistently. And then obviously, like you mentioned, traveling to bowl games and stuff. Yeah. Any highlights?
Oh, I don't even know where to begin. That 2011 season for Oklahoma State, like when I was in college, like I covered the football team, but they were just kind of getting going with Gundy. He had my first semester in journalism was when he got hired as the head coach, and then they announced they're going to build the stadium. So it was all kind of in the infancy. When I was in school, the basketball team was it when I was in college. I would stand in line at Gallagher-Iba, go sit on the floor for that Final Four team. I mean, I was living and dying with that Tony Allen team, John Lucas. So it's a weird thing. You're in school and you're a fan, and then you start covering the teams. And then you just kind of realize, when I cover Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, it kind of like normalizes it to where you realize they're just kids. Like they're really just 18, 19-year-olds just trying to like make it in the world. And there's so much pressure on them from like idiots like me that are like living and dying with the Final Four run. And, adults that follow college sports so passionately in this state. It's a great thing. But working in the media, you just kind of get to know these guys, and you realize, man, they're just like kids just trying to make a career out of this, So, but in college, there were some fun memories. I went to Nebraska and covered their first win in Nebraska, like ever, I think, because Nebraska was so good for so long. But my professional career, the 2011 OSU football season, when they won the Big 12, and at that point, it seemed like they could win a national championship going into that Bedlam game. Like, even I know they lost to Iowa State, but there was still a chance they could sneak in. Like, that's never been a thing. Like, growing up, I was just excited when I saw a 21 next to OSU. I was like, whoa, they're in the top 25? That's cool. Now that's like an everyday thing. But back then, that season, I covered just about every game that year. I went on the road with them, which is a unique experience. That's a definite highlight. But for me, the NBA Finals in Miami, getting to go there. We were staying in Coconut Grove, where LeBron lives, this ritzy hotel, the media hotel. Pool overlooking the ocean. All the TV guys would just lay out by the pool and get our stories done for the day. And that was probably the most fun trip I've ever been on. And at that point, it seemed like the Thunder could win the world title, which was exciting. So I've gotten to do a lot of cool things. OU football's taken me a lot of cool places. Same with OSU. And the Thunder has been just... That's a different thing that I've experienced, because we cover local sports here, but like when the Thunder were that good, like we had people calling us from other countries wanting Thunder video and interviews, and ESPN called us all the time, and that would like put us on like the worldwide map. Like, you go to any country and you say you're from Oklahoma, they'll be like, Thunder? Right. So
that's really cool.
Those are some of the big highlights for me.
Yeah. So you get your chance. Timing just happens right. You go work, at the station, and you're earning your way through. You're getting little bits here and there. What's that first time that you're like? Does Bob Berry retire and then it kind of hands it down to you? Like, how does that work? Or what's that first time for you that you're on, like, he's taking a day off and he's like, you got this, you do it?
Yeah. I never got to do that with him because he was always there, and I was kind of like the number 4 guy in the pecking order, so I didn't get to anchor. So then Channel 9 came calling, the rival, and they said, hey, well, we want you to be our number 3.
Yeah.
You'll get to anchor, and you'll get to do this and that. And so I was like, sounds great.
Right.
And it was really hard to leave Junior and them because he had brought me along and was my mentor. But he understood. He's like, he's like, you got to take this. I don't have a spot to move you up. And so that was kind of a weird deal with Channel 9. It didn't really work out. After 8 months, I got caught up in a big bunch of layoffs. They laid off a ton of people, and after 8 months, I was just tossed into it. And I never really understood what happened with that. I didn't get a real clear explanation, but it was a blessing in disguise because the spot at Channel 5 opened up right when that happened.
Right.
And I was doing more producing and behind the scenes stuff than I really thought I was going to be doing at Channel 9. And Channel 5, it was like pure on air, anchoring all the time, reporting live all the time.
Yeah.
And I've been there. I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary in May.
Congrats, that's awesome.
Within like a year span, I was at all the 3 major stations. So I felt like I was getting it kind of looked like I was some kind of, hired gun or someone who likes to jump ship.
Right.
But I really just took one opportunity and it just didn't work out to where then all of a sudden I'm at all 3 stations.
Yeah.
That wasn't how I planned it, but what I've done the last 10 years has been a total thrill, and I'm way more happier than I ever would have been probably at the other 2 based on the opportunities that have been presented to me.
Yeah. And to the point you just made, a lot of people don't realize that it's not just in front of the camera. Like you mentioned, you're producing. Like you're taught in school to do everything, right? You're like, it's not just like. It's
funny. People think it's this glamorous, okay, you got to go to Miami for the NBA Finals, which that's like the only trip that I could brag about glamour. But they think teams and stadiums just roll a red carpet out for you. No, I've been sent to the airport by myself with over 100 pounds of TV equipment, those big suitcases I'm sure you're familiar with.
Pelican cases, yeah.
And I got to get one of those carts, and I've literally taken photos of this, put on social media. It's just I can barely see over how much gear that I have, and I'm responsible for it.
Yeah.
I got to go to the stadium with all that gear, set it up, go live by myself, setting up the camera by myself. Basically a one-man band is what we call it. And when I anchor, I don't have minions editing my video or making my graphic. I do it all.
No one's running to you, tapping you on the face of the towel and bringing you a coffee as well.
It's funny. Every time I'm out in the field and I'm live and I'm by myself, I've had a lot of photographers lately too. They do a good job helping us, but there's certain times when I'm on the road where it's just me.
Yeah.
And people walk by and go, "Where's your camera guy?" I'm like, "You're looking at him.
My tripod is all I need."
I hope the wind doesn't blow too hard here, but it's way less glamorous than I think people really realize.
Definitely.
I'm flying coach. I'm just trying to make it on time.
Hoping
on
when
air.
your gear gets to the place you're going, right? Hopefully not having to connect.
Yeah, we've had a few of those
bags.
issues where the bags didn't come, and you just kind of gotta improvise.
Right. I guess back to golf a little bit. You had some great friends at school, and you have an involvement in a OSU podcast, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me about that and how that I'm a co-host of Pistols Firing podcast. Pistols Firing is an online blog / website that covers strictly Oklahoma State sports. Mm-hmm. It was started by my friend Kyle Porter, who now has become one of the preeminent golf writers, golf voices, and great follow on Twitter as well.
Great follow on Twitter. He and I kind of became friends through Twitter. Mm-hmm. He actually, when I was a sports editor at the school paper, he came in to write.
Yeah.
And he tried to be like Bill Simmons. And it's well, I'd love to give you a column right away, but all my writers will quit because they've been paying their dues and they want a column.
Yeah.
So he ended up not working very long. And then we became friends really when he started Pistols Firing, and we would exchange funny tweets. And he asked me to come on his podcast the first time. This was like 8 years ago.
Before he podcast wasn't even cool.
He didn't even have a podcast. He just recorded our phone call basically is what it was. And so back in 2015, he called me while I was at the OSU Texas game and said, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast twice a week? I have a few sponsors lined up." I was like, "Great." I'm always looking for outlets to do more opinion and get my voice out there, because in sports on TV, we have just a finite, very small amount of time to do anything, let alone have an opinion.
Yeah.
And so he and I started doing that, and he recently just sold his website to a kid named Marshall Scott, who used to work for him. And he's just so busy with golf now, he doesn't have time to run the website and everything. But I stayed on. I still host the podcast twice a week, and it's a great outlet for me to kind of keep all the stats and Kyle always commented that he's like it's hard for me to keep all the OSU information in here. I don't know how you have OSU, OU, and Thunder in here somewhere.
Yeah.
So it keeps me fresh, especially in football season when we're doing pregame shows for an hour. I'll have like things just ready to go up here that I've been doing on the podcast twice a week. So it just kind of. It's that rep thing I told you about. It just keeps me fresh, keeps all the information fresh, and I really enjoy doing it.
That's one thing that I noticed too from just like doing, like people said to me like, why do you do like 2 or 3 episodes a week? I'm like, because like it gets so much easier doing it more and more and more, right? I mean, I might scale back and to 2, but you're right. Like reps, it makes it easier, it makes you more comfortable. The same with pretty much anything. It's just practice, isn't it? But when you're talking stats, it just reinforces and reminds you, okay, I've mentioned this stat twice this week. It's easy and it's natural for me to pull it out rather than me like, oh, let me check. And I'm not really confident. I'm checking it on paper. And people can sense that in your voice, right? When you're checking a stat that's like, I think it's this, but rather than like delivering it, which is awesome. But so continuing on then from because I'm a golfer and I love to talk about golf and the Masters.
I need your swing. I need you to help me with my swing.
The thing is, like, people watching or listening, don't copy my swing. It's the rhythm that looks good, but
don't copy your swing.
Have you seen the position I'm in at the top?
I've looked at this is Oklahoma Instagram account. If anyone listening, go to it. Watch this ridiculous swing that he has, and it looks like Adam Scott.
Oh no, it's far from that. It's more like Wolf and Jim Furyk together. People listening to this who know that I grew up playing golf with, there's probably one guy listening to this, Ben Westgate. If you're listening, you could just laughing your head off on the way to work as on the bus.
Well, for a hack like me, it looks like Adam Scott.
Well, okay.
It might to a seasoned golfer like yourself. I'm sure you.
Now that
no one likes the way their own swing looks. It's like hearing your own voice on a voicemail.
Yeah,
like no one likes that. It's like seeing yourself on TV. Yeah. It's hard to watch, but it's good.
Now we play at the same club. Well, we'll spend some more time on the golf course.
Cool.
But tell me about covering golf and going to the Masters, because like as a fan, which is different for you going because you've got to work, right? It's totally different. Like I'm sure you would love to go as a fan and then another time go work. And Eddie mentioned this on a previous podcast. It's a totally different experience. But what is it like being in media and having to deal with the Masters, Augusta National, the whole thing that comes with it, and like even getting a pass to get in? Like,
it's extremely hard to go to. Every local TV affiliate that has a local golfer probably would like to go.
Right.
It really helped me knowing Kyle Porter, who I mentioned earlier. He goes and covers it for CBS. He kind of put me in touch with the right people to where I could even start the application process. Okay. You can't just do that. You have to like know someone to even start the application. Like, because there's not just some online website. You go, hey, I work for KOCO, let me in.
Yeah.
And so I started that process, and I really did a good job, I think, explaining why I deserved to go, because Victor Hovland was there from Oklahoma State as an amateur. The Masters loves the amateur side of things with Bobby Jones. Like there's a reason the amateur gets to go into Butler Cabin when they're presenting the green jacket. So I said, we got Victor there. I covered him at OSU.
He's just won the USO.
USAM. And all this He's one of the hottest names in golf. Yeah. And by the way, here's 6 other Oklahoma State golfers that are playing.
Right.
I'd like to come cover it. To my shock, they approved my credential.
Yeah.
So at that point, I got to figure out how am I getting to Augusta and where am I staying, and it was a kind of a crazy process. But
how late did they approve you? Like how long would you have?
They gave plenty of heads up.
Okay.
Plenty of heads up, and then just figuring out the process of how to get there and how to cover it. And so I get there, and I'm literally walking up to the clubhouse, and I'm just like all nervous as I'll get out, because like you hear all these stories of like Augusta and like people doing the wrong thing and being banned for life. That's all I could think about was don't do the wrong thing, and they're very limited on where you can bring a camera. So I was afraid to even like open my camera lens, and so I check in and everything, and the media center is just this multi-million-dollar facility that they've just rebuilt and redone, and it was jaw-dropping. Yeah. And all like the little famous foods, they have just little grab stations. You can go get the pimento cheese sandwich anytime you want. There's a restaurant where you don't pay anything. It was like going to the Masters on steroids. But I couldn't take my camera a lot of places. I could cover it, but like to a very limited amount. Like for local TV, ESPN has all the rights, CBS has all the rights. I basically could do the little huddle up interviews right when they get done from the scoring tent or scoring center. and I couldn't go on camera a lot of places. Like a lot of the local Augusta, Georgia affiliate was going live out on the street.
Yeah.
They weren't even going live inside the gates. So it was kind of just, don't get fired, don't get banned. Even if you don't cover this ever again in your life, you want to be able to come back here as a fan, don't get blacklisted. So I was really walking on eggshells the whole time.
Yeah. And so this was 2018?
2018 when Tiger won.
Tiger won and Hovland gets...
Or was that...
Was it?
2019.
I don't know.
No, it's 2019. Patrick Reed, unfortunately, won in 2018. Beat Ricky by a shot.
Yeah.
But no, 2019.
But you were there when Tiger won as well, right?
Yes. You mentioned Eddie.
Yeah.
Eddie and I were waiting for him. I had 2 quick Tiger stories.
Yeah. We got time.
Okay.
Don't make them quick. You can tell me.
Okay, good.
Tell me all about it.
We're on the 10th hole. 10th hole is probably one of the holes I wanted to see in person.
Right.
It's this huge downhill. It looks even steeper in person. In person, it looks like a double black diamond ski slope.
Okay.
And so Tiger hits a good drive. He's in the middle of the fairway. And Eddie and I had waited. We had to wait that long. That's the cool thing about the Masters. On Thursday and Friday, they separate all the big names to where the crowds aren't that thick. You can wait on whoever you want and go see them pretty close up. And so Tiger's in the fairway. He's literally about to take the club back. And Eddie and I feel this huge gust of wind hit our backs going out toward Tiger.
Yeah.
And everyone on the green starts murmuring, like, don't hit. This wind's going to kill this approach shot. Tiger's literally, he looks up one more time and is about to take the club back, and he takes this huge step back and starts looking up at the trees. And like 1 second goes by, 2 seconds go by. Then the wind hits his shirt. You can see the wind hitting his shirt.
Goosebumps.
And he kind of just looks up around, and he kind of waits for the trees to settle, thinks the wind's right, hits it to about 15 feet, makes birdie.
Yeah.
It was like watching Michelangelo paint. It is what it was like. And then it was me and Eddie were just like looking at each other like, this guy is just, he knows this place so well. It's unbelievable. And then the last day I had to leave, and this is my luck. Yeah. So the Masters has always been the week before the NBA playoffs start. And for some reason this year, the NBA playoffs started that weekend. So I had to leave. I could have stayed all the way until Sunday.
Yeah.
I probably should have just quit my job and just stayed. If I'd known Tiger was going to win, I might have just quit my job and said I'm staying through Sunday.
To see this, yeah.
So I had to leave on Friday, unfortunately, Friday afternoon. And I'm walking away from the course for the final time, just about to cry practically.
Yeah.
And I see on the board that Tiger's coming up to the ninth hole. I'm like, well, it's going to be tight, but I'm waiting for Tiger one more time. And, nine's not a birdie hole. He hits it about 35 feet on the green. I'm like, great. I'm not going to see anything cool. He rolls in a 35-footer for birdie and does a huge fist pump. Crowd goes berserk. And that's really when he took off and really became one of the leaders. And I'm like, all right, I'm good.
I've
seen what I need to see
in person.
And I got to be like part of the gallery that just goes nuts with him, which was so much fun. And I hope I get to go back. I mean, I got approved for credentials again this past year, but then the pandemic happened, and then they had hardly any media at the November Masters, and then I didn't get anything in my email about this one in the spring. So unfortunately I wasn't able to go back, but maybe next year.
So the first time you went, you were covering Hovland and you were with all your gear and you were there to cover, and I'm sure you were like, might watch a little bit of golf, but I'm here to do my job. Mm-hmm. Was the same time in that Tiger one, like you were there to work as well, but you got to see a little bit of it more?
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
are they strict on making sure that you are working as well?
Not really, which I was also kind of worried about. Like, are they going to see what I'm sending back, or are they going to know am I filming enough stuff? Right. That was kind of the beauty of it though, is because I couldn't film anything golf wise, so I just got to go watch, and then they provide the highlights. That was kind of the nice thing about it. I could get with our online coverage now. You can see every shot. I can watch Victor's entire round in a couple minutes, and so that was nice. So I would get there as early as possible, as you can imagine, as much sleep as I could get. Because you wake up, it's 8 a.m. You're like, I could be at Augusta National right now. Why am I laying in bed? So I just get up and go. Yeah. Because it's a place I've always wanted to see. It's literally like being on a movie set, because you're so familiar with the grounds and each hole, but it looks fake because there's not a flower out of place. There's not a dead flower on the property. Amen Corner looks like a green screen, projection. It doesn't even look real. It's just so gorgeous, and it's something I'll never forget. And I was glad Eddie was there, and I got someone to experience it with. And he and I, you can't have your cell phone. That's another strict no-no. Right. So Eddie and I did radio hits they have they have like literally like phone booths, like just like
Yeah.
the old school phones where you pop a quarter in, and I didn't think you had to pay for the quarter. You can just
Yeah.
pick it up and dial collect or dial whatever. So that was fun.
Yeah, doing radio hits on Masters. That's so cool.
It's kind of a big flex. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
here at Augusta. How are you guys doing back in Oklahoma? You know, it's like I'm very, very, very lucky, and I'm glad Augusta National they realized what a good story Victor was, and he ended up winning the Low-Am, and he got to sit in Butler Cabin when Tiger got his green jacket. That had to be just an insane experience.
I mean, from everything you see about Victor, I mean, doing this podcast, he recently won in Germany. Was it Germany they won, right? BMW,
Over the weekend, yeah.
Over the weekend, and watching him on 18, he's got a 2-shot lead, and he's got 260 over water, and he's like, you know what, I'm just going to hit in the middle of the green. Like,
He's
that
fearless.
takes serious stones to do that. But it is fearless golf, and it's great to watch.
That's kind of what is his biggest strength, and also I think is some of his biggest weakness when it comes to major championships. That's why I didn't really like his chances at the U.S. Open, is he fires at every flag.
Right.
And part of that's being I think he's third in the world in approaches over 200 yards. So like part of that's his best skill, so he has to utilize it. Part of it's being 23 years old and not really knowing what's going on yet. But not many guys would do that with a 2-shot lead over water, 260, and he hits it pin high, and it's easy 2-putt, and he wins. He is going to be. Oklahoma State has only had one major champion in their history, their illustrious history, all the national championships, all the conference championships. Bob Tway chipping in out of the bunker is their only major. And I think Victor's the one to do it. I really do. And, Matthew Wolff finished second in the U.S. Open last year. He could have won the PGA if he had made a single putt a year ago. He was on the leaderboard this year. But Victor is just, I think, going to be more consistent. And he doesn't really have a weakness. His weakness was around the greens, but he's improved that so much. And he's just a good personality, too. Like, he's just a fun-loving, jovial dude from Norway, doesn't take himself seriously. Like, he got that eye injury at the U.S. Open. He writes this just hilarious description about it. That's just kind of who he is.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy drove to every PGA event in his car during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking, like, thousands of miles. How many, like, spoiled, rich PGA golfers would do that?
When you play at OSU and you're on private jets going to every golf tournament as well, right?
Yeah, like he's already lived that life. Yeah. And he's listening to his Norwegian death metal and driving to each tournament, which he's just an interesting guy. And I hope he wins a major, and it's going to be unfortunate having to root against him in the Ryder Cup because he's going to be a menace in the Ryder Cup too.
Him and John Rahm together would be awesome.
That's going to be scary. Him and Rory.
Yeah. I love seeing that clip of him. They posted it this week of the bobbleheads. Right, he's got bobbleheads.
Yep. Every time he's in the lead, I'm like, "Is Victor in the lead?" And I just post that video.
So when you're there, you get to interview him as well. Then you've been around him a few times, and I'd love to interview. I sent him a message like when just after he graduated, and he replied. He was like, "I'm just a little busy right now." I'm like, I get it, dude. You just graduated. You're the best player in college golf.
Yeah, for sure. He signs a deal with Ping and all that. Yeah, and most of my interview experiences with any athlete comes in a group setting. Okay. Rarely do I get one-on-one. He's so busy. Yeah. It's the Masters. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to get a sit-down hour-long interview, hardly with anybody. Yeah. And that goes for even current football players, So it's hard to get to, that's one thing that's changed since when I first started in TV back in 2008 to now. You don't get the chance to get to know these guys as well as you used to.
Right.
Before, when the Thunder first got here, it would just be me and Reggie Jackson. Yeah. And a couple, maybe 2 or 3 other reporters.
Was Royce there at that time as well?
Yes. Yeah. Royce was one of the first beat guys. It would be Royce, me, and 1 or 2 people from the Oklahoman maybe.
So they knew exactly who you are.
Now, Kevin and Russell, it was still a big group. Sure. But Reggie Jackson or Serge or Nick Collison, you kind of chit-chat a little bit. Now, when I go in the Thunder locker room, I can't even get within 5 feet. There's so many. Yeah. There's so much more media now than there was. Everyone has a podcast. Everyone has a website. Everyone wants in. Everyone wants access to where it's it's really hard to get to know people now with just how this just sheer, like, because they look out and all they see is lenses.
Right.
Everyone has a cell phone camera now. That's a new thing.
I don't know how that must drive them nuts. I mean, they're trained to deal with it, but there comes a point where you just got to take some time off, and
NBA guys are pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Other than Russell.
Well,
Russell
they
wasn't
tower
very
over
good at
everybody
it.
too, right? For the most part.
Yeah, and just they do so much media. It's such a media-friendly league to where once they're in the league for 4 or 5 years, they become so polished.
Yeah.
Like Derek Fisher was like a politician. He spoke so eloquently, was so good. Kevin Durant was great to deal with. He ended up becoming a really good soundbite. Russell was never that great to deal with, as we all know. But most of the NBA guys, once they are in the league, they become super polished and media friendly.
Yeah. To that point, then, the Thunder, we obviously just had the what is it, the lottery and stuff. And what's your feeling on Thunder basketball coming into the season?
Well,
it's been a weird year, right?
Yeah, and this was always going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
Like, we've been living a fairy tale.
Yes.
The fact the Thunder have the second best record since 2009 in the entire NBA in little old Oklahoma City, I don't think people really grasp that. I think a lot of people realize we're probably not going to have a Kevin Durant, a Russell Westbrook, and James Harden on the same team. I mean, it's 3 Hall of Famers, 3 MVPs. That's not doable. But what is doable, and the only way the Thunder are going to get back to being the best team in the Western Conference, or one of the best teams, is through the draft, because they're never going to get free agent talent. They never have. And the key is they're doing like a supercharged rebuild. Like, it's an unprecedented amount of first-round picks they have. The lottery didn't go their way, but they have so many picks that it almost, won't matter. Like, they can trade up to like the second or third pick if they want to. It's a matter of what are they willing to give up. So I just think Sam Presti knows what he's doing. The trades this guy pulls off should be like vetoed by the league. Like the one that people forget about that no one ever remembers is the Tyson Chandler trade. We never would have had Kendrick Perkins here because he traded Joe Smith, Chris Wilcox, and the rights to Devin Harden for Tyson Chandler, who they for some reason flagged his foot and the trade didn't go through. He wins the title like a year or two later with the Mavs. Yeah. Like, no one, that trade should get turned down by the league. It's such a great trade for Oklahoma City. So I'm confident he'll draft good players. We've seen even when, he goes against convention too. Like, no one thought Russell Westbrook was the 4th best player in the draft. No one thought everyone thought Harden at 3 was a reach. So I even at picking at 6, he might end up with the best guy in the draft just because he's so much better than the rest of the GMs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad GMs picking in front of him.
Well, which is good for him, right? Because I didn't grow up watching basketball. I didn't really grow up knowing. I knew who Michael Jordan was, but I didn't know how good he was until, thankfully, this new documentary came out, right? And you see like how amazing he is, but mentioned GMs, so you mentioned like Krause, and like they hated him, right? And it's just all this stuff that goes on, and it seems like Presti's really, loved in by many and for many reasons. Well,
and the thing that's most impressive about him, obviously, all the picks he's made are great, and I would put his resume against any GM picking wise. People poke holes in the guys he's picked. Some haven't worked out, but you can do that with any GM, and I guarantee his hit percentage is way higher than anyone else.
Yeah.
But the thing I like about Sam, and I don't know him. He's kind of an enigma. He's keeps things very close to the vest, very secretive. A lot of the way the Thunder do things are his method. One thing that I'm so impressed with is he's basically become an Oklahoman. And the first thing he does is take anyone who's acquired, any player, doesn't matter if they're going to be a G League player, he takes them to the memorial and shows them around and teaches them about Oklahoma and what makes the people here the way they are. And all the philanthropy efforts, the Thunder go way above and beyond the standard that teams are held to for the NBA Cares initiative, where they're required to do a certain amount of community service. But the Thunder go above and beyond. It's remarkable, all the work they do in the community. And that, to me, I think, goes unnoticed a lot. I think that'll be probably what Sam's remembered for most here is just how a guy from Massachusetts became an Oklahoman and led this franchise to like just an unheard of level of success right away.
Yeah, I've done a podcast with the ladies down at Thunder Cares, and you're right, it's incredible the stuff that they do and stuff they're consistently doing, and
building basketball courts and rundown communities that don't have one.
Right.
I mean, the list goes on and on and on, like shopping sprees during the holidays for families that can't afford it. It's just, and I've covered a lot of those events, and it really is eye-opening, just the impact a professional sports franchise has had on our community, and it really has. I think anyone that's been affected by that they're probably think about that more than any playoff win, you know?
Yeah. You mentioned obviously fall is the busiest time for you. You know, we've got football coming up and then some basketball as well. What are you looking forward to? Anything to point out? Is OU ever going to win another national championship in our time? Because it seems like it's the Final Four and then just fall apart.
It's crazy. When Bob Stoops won the national championship in 2000, you're like, they're going to win. Oh, yeah. Three. It's kind of like the Thunder. When they got to the finals, you're like, they're going to win 3 or 4 of these. Yeah. And for some reason, here we are 21 years later, they haven't. But I'll say this is the best chance they've had in over a decade. 2008, they made the championship game. Great game against Florida. Could have gone either way. Didn't win it. They now have the defense to hold up. I mean, just go back to the Big 12 championship game last year. They held Iowa State or their offense, rather, got held to 3 points in the second half, and they won the game. I mean, when would that have happened over the past decade? Never. I mean, their defense was historically bad for so long, to where Lincoln Riley has just totally revamped their recruiting on the defensive side. Alex Grinch, the day that Mike Stoops was let go, I said, they need to go hire Alex Grinch. I thought he was the best defensive coordinator in the country. Lincoln agreed with me, hired him. Yeah. He's doing a great job. He's recruiting much bigger size in the secondary, which they need. But this is their best shot at it in over a decade. And you mentioned the fall. It's my favorite time of the year. You know, I grew up playing soccer. That was my passion. But my favorite sport has always been college football. Yeah. And that's why I love living here. We have 2 top 15 programs in the country in our state, which is unheard of. Only Alabama can probably say that, in Florida maybe. So it's my favorite time of the year, and I'm just looking forward to being in a stadium full of fans. Like this last year was rough for everybody, and just seeing some of the golf tournaments now with fans and the energy that provides, I can't wait for football season to do that same thing. Talking that then, finishing off, soccer's your original passion. Do you cover the energy much? I mean, it can't be easy. But everybody that plays, it's hard to go to the games because they're on the weekends, and I'm by myself in studio. But I'll show highlights and stuff. It's just they haven't really. It's hard to catch on with them. Like the names change so frequently. It's it's hard to. It's not like the Thunder where we have the same guys for 10 years. You know, so it's hard to. I feel like it's hard for them to catch on name recognition wise too, right? You're competing with college sports and Thunder as well. Yeah, and then I love the local passion from the fans that I've seen. From the energy has a decent following, good following, and so I do my best to cover them. It's hard for me to get to a game. I like to go to a game. It's just it's hard on the weekends. I'm so busy, but I get it. But I know people that work there. Tyler Vaughn does a great job working for the Energy, and I love to see them win a championship. That's how you generate a lot of interest. Is go win it. So they've had a tough time doing that too. So hopefully they can have a great season this year. Yeah. Well, mate, thanks for coming down on your day off. I really appreciate you taking the time out. For people listening, how can they follow you, get in touch? How can they listen to the podcast and stuff like that? Yeah. No, I'm very active on Twitter. I think sometimes people recognize me more for that than my work on television, which is funny because I like to be humorous on there. You can follow me on Twitter at KOCO Carson on Twitter. I have a Facebook page under my name for KOCO as well. And you can listen to OSU. If you're into OSU, you can go to pistolsfiringblog.com. We post a podcast there twice a week. You can also find that, I think, on SoundCloud and various other podcasting platforms. So this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to teeing it up soon when the golf course opens. And if the rain stops, we can go hit balls. Well, we're going to use this camera. We're going to film my swing, and by the end of it, my swing is going to look like yours. Gosh, you're going to be more laid off than half of the country that was a few years ago. Anyway, appreciate you coming down. Yeah, this was fun. And for everyone listening, we'll catch you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF.
Also, huge shout out to RCB Bank for jumping on board to be a sponsor. RCB Bank's loan promotion is here. For a limited time, head into any of their 40 Oklahoma locations to get as low as 1.79 APR on your next car, boat, camper, or ATV. Apply online at rcbbank.com. RCB Bank, that's my bank. Rate and finance with approved credit. Restrictions apply. Member FDIC. Huge shout out to my sponsors. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.